heartbreak, pain, sorrow. Those are all keywords of the Three of Swords. And I am so excited that Natalia over at Ouroboros is back with some juicy things for us to talk about. And this one that I'm doing is hashtag heartbreak, all about the misunderstanding of the Three of Swords. And this Three of Swords is such a powerful card for me, not only because it's just so, to me, the Rider Waite system, the Rider Waite Three of Swords is very bland. And Pamela Coleman Smith, she was inspired by the Solabusca image of that card, that it was like a heart pierced with sheathed swords, which is really interesting if you think about it. They're not actual swords, they're sheathed swords, like in a sheath, and they're piercing the sword that way. But I wanted to look into, and a couple of people have been doing some excellent VRs to this. There's Julianne Victoria and James Feeney. You did a great job on this too. I mean, you're all doing wonderful things with the VRs, but I was like, well, how do I think of this? So I started thinking about all the layers that I put on my own readings when I do readings. And I thought, well, I look at the word sorrow and I look at the word heartbreak, because heartbreak was kind of my preliminary keyword for the Rider Waite system, because that's just the imagery, right? Just based on blind symbolism alone, you could probably get that, especially if you were given a reading for someone and that card came up. They might have a reaction to that, like, oh shit, what does that mean? So you're always having to put them at ease before the reading even starts. Like, look, let me say it all, and then don't react. So I feel like there's a thing that happens with that as well, but with readings for other people. But this card, okay, with the coloration and these shards of glass, and piercing this sacred rose in the middle, and how there's one big sword and then two little ones that are kind of curved in, which is to me a nod to the Marseilles system and how the swords are curved. So that's pretty cool. But the color, now we can go on color symbolism all day long, okay? But I've got a whole other video up already on the Thoth coloration. But there was a sense, felt like a sort of melancholy, like the sorrow was more, I know someone else said it's a self-inflicted sorrow, but it's deeper than that. When I look at the card layers, like I said before, this is Saturn in Libra, and Saturn is exalted in Libra, which means that's where it's supposed to be. And when I look at that, just astrologically, it makes me think that it's just something disrupting the balance, right? Libra is all about balance, but Saturn is about creativity. And I mean, there's so much more that Saturn is, but it calls to me on a creative level, and the threes do as well. Threes in numerology, the way that I would read Marseilles, is more of creative expression, not so much wands, like that fire, passion, that kind of creativity, but more like an imagination, your ideas that will birth out creativity that way. And it kind of starts here. That's kind of where I see the creativity happening. Now, if you thought about this creativity in an imagination, more creative idea way, then it could be, you've been on this, you've been doing good, you've been having ideas coming, and you've been balanced, right? And then this extra sword is filling you with either a block, like a literal, like writer's block, like a creative block, where you're not getting any ideas, or you have too many jumbled up in there, and it's filling you with kind of a sense of, how do I get out of this? How do I do this? I mean, how do I rethink? And then when you're in the throes of a project, it's really hard to stop the thoughts from going like this and unfolding to where you can kind of change it up, change your mind a little bit, say, okay, well, maybe I need to come at this project from another angle, change the perspective a little. And I think that sword, it causes more anxiety. I don't want to say full on anxiety, more like just a sense of not knowing what to do with that extra sword, because we're not that far into the suit yet. So with the threes, I know James touched on this being banah. That's the Great Mother, yes, but the Hebrew word for this, for banah, is understanding, which means once we have something, okay, the threes are like the very first manifestation of something. You have a point for one, a line for two, and then the three is the triangle, which means that we've finally gotten somewhere, right? So it's like you've been in a state where you're okay being individual, you're okay being with one other person or one other idea, one other mindset, and then this new one comes in and kind of slams into you and you're not prepared for it. That's kind of what I kind of thought about it in this way, because I wanted to put the mentality aspect of it, the air suit aspect of it, for the purpose of this video, but I kept going back to the creative too, and then with banah being understanding, it was more so like I have to change how I think as a 2 or even as a 1 to be the 3. I have to be purely the 3. And sometimes that fills us because it can feel like a change. And I think that within certain aspects of change lay a sense of sorrow, like, oh, well, I really liked who I was at 2. Now I'm birthing these new ideas, and that's kind of changing how I think of myself, or if that's how I'm rethinking how I think of the universe, because I'm birthing new things in this universe. So the change itself can be where the sorrow lies. Now, another thing is that about like the shaking things up with the ideas aspect of it. Say you're on a roll, right? Or maybe you have some sort of creative vocation in your life, right? Either whether it's a hobby that you have, like you keep up with, or something in your job that allows you to have, your own ideas come forth. A lot of jobs don't, but if you had a job where it allows you to put forth, your ideas onto the table, so to speak. What if this extra sword is what you've been waiting on? You're sitting here in a state of sorrow because you're waiting around for that third sword, that third idea, that extra thought that you're waiting. And because of the wait, and you're in this state of limbo almost, where you're waiting on the new idea to come along, and you're trying to be open, but you're not really there yet. That's kind of where I went with that. You're kind of like stuck in the limbo only because the rut that you are in seems to fill you with this type of emotion. So that kind of made sense once I wrote it down. For me, and I want to nod back to James's video, I will leave Natalia's original video, James's video, and Julianne Victoria's video, because they're all great. And those are the only ones I've seen thus far, but I will continue to keep stalking this. But James mentions the Great Mother, the bitter sea, banah, right? The third Sifra. And like I said before, I do consider banah the Great Mother, the dark feminine, almost like this tough love aspect, like he said, of the mother. But I also see sorrow with the Great Mother as the eternal human sorrow. What is sorrow that all humans face? That all mothers face? You birth something, and in my case, I am a mother of humans, but you can birth a whole bunch of things. But you birth something, the inevitability of that birth will end in a death. That is the ultimate human sorrow, is that I have birthed a human, and it's the only thing constant in that child's life is that it will die someday. And I feel like as humans, as death sitting upon our backs at all times, no matter what, that we were birthed for the purpose to live life and then die, that it will be the end result. And I think that there's a sorrow in that. There's a sorrow in being the mother that has birthed all of this. She's birthing a whole bunch of things, and she's giving us the tough love, and she's wanting us to be the best possible person that we can be, but we are going to die. And she knows that. And the child may go through life being naive for the first half of its life without even really being able to understand the sorrow. And I remember my mother and grandmother used to tell me, oh, you'll know when you have kids, you'll know this when you have kids. And I never really understood what they were talking about. But now that I have kids, I do. That there are certain aspects, there's a certain fear / heartbreak / sorrow, melancholy, whatever you want to call it, of being a mother. Now, like I said, there's a whole bunch of mothers out there that have no children. Okay, you're birthing ideas, you're very creative, you may let something fester for 9 months and then you're birthing it out and giving it to the universe. That's the same exact thing. I want you to know that deep down, I feel like that. Whatever you are birthing, you have created something in the depths of your soul, and then you birth it and give it to someone, or the universe, give back to the universe. That is a birth. And I feel like there's a certain sorrow with those births as well, because when you birth something, say it's an idea, or let's say you paint a picture and you sold the picture, that's still a death. That's a severance, right? That the inevitability that you may forget what that painting even looks like because you won't ever see that person again or that painting again. That those sort of things, or that you've birthed these ideas and these mindsets, and you yourself aren't who you were yesterday. So inevitably, those ideas that you birthed 10 years ago aren't from how you would have birthed them now. And there's some sort of sorrow with that. And if we look at this in like a scientific way, 7 years is how long cells take to live, right? So 7 years ago, I was not physically, scientifically, nowhere near the person I am today. That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. That 7 years ago, the cells in my body are completely different than they are today. I want to talk about like the inevitability of death, okay? That's the ultimate sorrow for the great mother, anybody that's birthing things, creating things. But I want to talk about a little bit more about, I want to say this. It's not just babies. I want to reiterate that. It's not just babies. Ideas can fizzle out. Mindsets are put to death to prepare for new ones. Relationships die that aren't serving you. And I think that there's death in so much, in so many things that we do in life, that the only thing that is constant is the death of those things. And we have to be adaptable in some way. But then because we're human, there is going to be a sorrow with that. There's going to be a human sorrow, a universal sorrow, a mother sorrow. All the things that you've birthed. Think of all the things that you've birthed in your life. Since your birth, what all have you birthed? And then are you the same person that birthed those things? Are you the same person that had those mindsets and relationships? No. Were those hard? Some of those ideas are hard to put to rest. Some of those relationships are hard to let go of and let die. And I think that is human suffering on a microcosm kind of a way. I know that there's a song, because I'm a rocker girl. There's a song by Falling in Reverse called The Drug in Me Is You. And there's a line in that says, if we are born to die and we all die to live, then what's the point of living life if it just contradicts? So an overly sensitive person might think, what is the point, right? Someone who's going through a death, or they've created something that has had to die in the last, however long, and they feel that sorrow, that human sorrow, they may think, what's the point? What's the point of going if the inevitability is going to be a death? And I think that it's about overcoming that human sorrow, and not so much that we will be above it, because that's not the point, to be above the inevitability, because we're not over that. But it needs to be something in our brain that the point is to live your best life, so that because you will die, it's about what you're leaving behind, and you knowing yourself, and you being the best possible person you could be. And I think that there's a beauty in that as well. For me, this card, in all systems, is a know thyself card. It is a know thyself as a human, as an individual, as a microcosm, and then knowing thyself to be an individual, and then knowing thyself to be part of the macro and part of the universe. And then think about, if you are having these human sorrows, then the universe as well. The universe has been birthing things for 14 billion years, and their things die as well. Think about that. And so when I think of the threes, and I think of the creative expression of the threes, and I think of Saturn and Libra and the balance of things, I think of the dualistic aspect of life and death and the inevitability of both, and how in order for the wheel to keep turning, we must birth and let shit go. So know thyself, be the best possible person you can be true to yourself, even when it hurts, because it's going to be inevitable that you will have something that hurts in your life. And I think that that's why Crowley put sorrow. So those are just, I know I rambled through most of that, but I just wanted to get in on Natalia's juicy topics and be part of the conversation. So those were just a few of my ideas that I was able to put forth on a piece of paper. So I'll continue to stalk this tag. Thank you, Natalia. I'll leave all the links to everybody else's videos that I've watched below, and hope to see everybody again on my channel. Bye.